Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. I presume people will be wandering in as we go through this. And when David said to me, I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, well, you know, how to change human beings. So we have about, I guess, 40 minutes to make that happen, to see how we go about doing that. And listening to the last speaker talk about innovation and information system security and where you're going, and somebody at the end talked about culture. I would say this: culture will eat strategy every day of the year. I watch companies put in leadership programs and this program and that program, and if that culture doesn't want to do it, they'll comply for a while, and as soon as the pressure backs off, they stop doing it. So what's culture? It's nothing more than what is acceptable in the environment that we operate, whether it's our company or whether it's a country. You mentioned 4% of people taking math classes. We've dumbed down universities. We said everybody should get a college degree. We got people getting degrees in esoteric stuff that's probably nobody wants to hire them for. And so the culture that we've created is math is difficult. Physics and science are difficult. And as good as you may be, however good you are, even with a PhD in math, at some point you hit a wall and it gets tough. And we've, in my opinion, created a culture that when things get tough, we often stop. Mention Sputnik. What were we spending on social programs with Sputnik money compared to what we're doing now? How is the culture different? Do we have the will to make the changes that we need to make the tough decisions to do what we have to do? So that's just my little preamble based upon sitting and listening on the last talk. So what we're talking about here, David alluded to hard skills versus soft skills. Well, I will take responsibility for the concept of soft skills, having been in human resources and organizational development for 25 years. We tend to call them soft skills. I don't call them soft skills. These are the hard skills. Hard to change. We're creatures of habit. We're used to doing things certain ways, trying to get a human being to change some behaviors that they engage in is monumental. And that's certainly what my coaching is all about. It's about leadership coaching. So how do you get people to change behaviors and sustain them and get other people to recognize and acknowledge them? So what separates us human beings from other animals? You can go back to Greek mythology, when Prometheus gave humans forethought and fire against Zeus's wishes. Paid a dear price for that. So one of the things we do as humans is the ability to think forward, make projections. Other animals have instincts. As we become more of a culture that doesn't rely on instincts, we rely on thought. How do we project things? You can jump forward to Aristotle. He said, nature, nurture, and fate. Three things. Nature, our DNA. And at this point we can't change it, but we're close to being able to do that. Nurture, the environment within which you grow up, the family you grow up with. You don't have much of a choice of that until you're 16, 18, or whatever, until you get out of the house. That's the environment you grow up in. And then fate. You walk into the Twin Towers on 9/11, fate. So how much of this do we really control? So when you think about it, what we humans do are really only three things. We think, we feel, and we behave. So, think. How does the brain work? If we think with our brain, how does it work? Experience, memory, association, pattern discernment and recognition, reason. Logic's tied into that. experimentation, and innovation. So our experience, that's the raw data that we get through our five senses. It can be first-hand, it can be second-hand, it can be education, it can be the environment, the world. Memory links these experiences together. If it wasn't for our memory, we'd always be perpetually at the starting point. Association, that's the link between the memory and our experiences. And from this association, we start to form patterns and discern patterns, and from these we create meaning. And from these meanings, we can start to reason. Deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, create hypotheses, form theories, and from those, we experiment and we innovate. The human race progresses by the number of things that we can do without thinking about it. Think of where we are in the world that you live in information security, cyberspace. Who would have thought of that 40 years ago? It's been around. What changed it? Broadband. Before that, it was the realms of a few universities and government agencies. Now we're on our smartphones constantly. Where will we be in 10 years? So when you think about how people think differently, the experiences that we have, talk to an economist. They run everything through the prism of, is it rational, marginal analysis, optimization. You talk to an attorney, is it legal? You talk to an artist, it's, what's the aesthetic value of it? Somebody talk to an information security person, how is your prism different? Just talking at the table before, during lunch, one of the main things going on in our country today, before the Supreme Court, is going to be health care. Everybody pretty much already knows how 4 of them are going to vote, and how the other 4 are going to vote. And then you got the person in the middle. Think of the power that that person has to fundamentally change how we've done healthcare. And here's 9 people with the same education, they're lawyers, and the same documents that they're judging it from. So you think about how our brains are connection machines, and we all connect these dots differently. Okay, so that's thinking. We feel. We feel. We're happy, sad, angry, grateful. These are feelings that we have. And we all have the same feelings. If you're sad, you're sad. Might have been a different event that triggered the sadness or the anger for each one of us. But emotions are pretty constant in human beings. And so when we make decisions, how many of us make decisions cognitively through a thought process? And how many of us make decisions emotionally? How does it make us feel? How do we combine both of those? And therein, and how much of that do we control? As an activating event, you feel something. We don't control our feelings. To a large extent, we don't even control our thoughts. There's always ambient neural activity going on in our brain. We're connected dots. The brain's a connection machine. And then, how do we behave? That's the world that I live in. Coaching somebody when they say, you know, you have been thinking about things differently and behaving differently. So when we talk about behavior, that's observable. Something that we can see. Words, tone of voice, body language. You can look at studies that say words are no more than 7% of what we communicate. Tone of voice, 38%. The body language, 55%. Little example. I've said, I want to be more open to other people's ideas. I want to listen to different points of view with an open mind. Somebody on my team makes a point, and instead of jumping down their throat, I'm going to listen to them. to say, all right, what? Just look at the word, they sound like what? I'm open. What's the message the other person probably gets? I'm not too interested. So think about the messages that we send through our choice of words. Words have meanings. Words have meanings. Our tone of voice and the body language that we use when we communicate. We think just because we have language, we communicate well. Think about how far we have come in information systems and security. Have we progressed that much as a human species in terms of how we communicate with the people around us? You can make a case with all of this technology. If I have an issue with somebody down the hall, instead of going down and saying, you and I have a different point of view, I'd like to discuss it. Let's debate it, let's dialogue about it. What do we tend to do? We send an email. We copy whoever we want to copy. And next thing you know, you have a whole bunch of conflict. So, think, feel, behave. As a result of all of these, what do we tend to get a lot of? It's inherent in human nature. Conflict. Conflict. Two types of conflict. Cognitive conflict. We have a different point of view. We can argue about it, we can debate it, we can dialogue about it. We can produce evidence to share our point of view. We can disagree vehemently and still go out and have a beer together. We like each other. The other type of conflict is what we call affective conflict. I don't like you and you don't like me. And then we get into ad hominem attacks and we attack the other person. What's the likelihood of coming to some sort of resolution and decision when you have that kind of conflict? And as humans, we all have goals that we want. Humans respond to incentives. What's the incentive for me? What's the incentive for you? How well do I know what it is you want from this issue? Thinking about our goals. You have a basic topic goal, what the words say. What movie do you want to go see? I want to go see this, you want to go see that. A little conflict. Another goal we have is relationship goal. What kind of relationship do we want to have with this person? There's an identity goal. How do we want the other person to view us? How do we want to see ourselves? As a victim, or as somebody that can take control of their own environment and say, how do I influence it in the direction that I want? And then there's a process goal. How do we want to resolve this conflict? How do we go about that? And we have to come up with decisions. Decisions. Back again to my thought on an economist. I'm working with a PhD economist right now in a coaching assignment, so I've learned a lot about how economists think. And he said to me, you got to realize, Chris, when you're dealing with a PhD economist from Princeton, we have half a dozen key principles. First one, people respond to incentives. Second, there's no free lunch. There's always unanticipated influences and unexpected consequences. There's always a risk. And we absolutely influence more than we can control. Most of us human beings think we control a lot more than we do. The reality is all we do is control our own behavior and to some extent our thinking. You don't control your spouse or somebody you work with. You can influence them. Most of us don't think we can influence as much as we want. So as you think of yourself as information system security professionals, how well do you influence the people in your company or people you consult with to do what it is you strongly believe are the best things to do. They cost money. And as the last speaker said, we tend to fight last year's war very often, you know, and until you've been hacked. I had my computer crash twice before I was smart enough to back it up. Now, intellectually, did I know it was smart to back it up? And the thought process always was, well, I'm busy, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. You know? I'll plan for my retirement. I'll plan for this. We tend to live now. That's the difference often between a Western culture and a lot of other cultures. We live in the moment. I don't think too much about what could happen, the what if scenario. My economist also said you got to take a look at, we always look at rationality, marginal analysis, and optimization. So working with him, I structure so much of my dialogue with him around those key points. And I ask questions around the things that I know are important to him and the prism through which he filters everything. My wife, if anybody in here has any insights that can help me understand how her brain works, I am open to suggestions. So, you know, there's different people. I just say, whatever you want, honey's fine with me. And I've learned that that tends to work. Most of the time. So, when we think about decisions, all of those filters. Now, leadership. Leadership. Leadership is influence. The ability to influence somebody to do what it is you want them to do. A leader's role. People get put in leadership roles. As a parent, you're a leader. In your organizations, you may be a leader. A leader's role is to raise people's aspirations for what they can become and help them release their energies so that they will put the effort out to do it. It's not about doing it for somebody. And I think too often we've tried to make it too easy for people. And we've lowered the bar. Legitimate power. You have the authority. You're the boss. You're the CEO, you're the CIO, you're the CFO. You can listen. Ultimately you say, all right, I hear what you said. I disagree. Here's what I want you to do. Something to come to peace with. The person with the authority in the organization ultimately makes the decision. Come to peace with that. What are you doing to influence them in the direction that you believe is most important? So authority. Other power bases, rewards and punishments. What rewards can you provide to somebody that they want? A reward is giving somebody something that they want. A punishment is inflicting something on somebody that they don't want. I love politics. We're debating back and forth. Somebody's been on the television from the CIA talking about whether waterboarding was effective at getting information. A person from the FBI said no, it wasn't. I don't know. I listen to both sides. I listen to both sides. So people respond to incentives, rewards and punishments. Another power base is connections. Connections. What do you know? You do this for me, I'll introduce you to so-and-so. A couple more power bases. Information. Information that somebody has that's hard to get, that somebody else would like. A thing that has changed a lot of that has been the internet. It's been the greatest commoditizer in the history of mankind. You want to find out what a dealer paid for a car? You go on the internet, you find out. The power has come to the consumer through the internet. Expertise. That's what you have up here. That's what you have and somebody else wants, and it's easier to get it from you than for them to learn it on their own. That's what you bring to the scenario in attempting to influence people, your expertise. As security specialists, how well do you influence using it? And then that last elusive one called charisma. Charisma. So power bases, what people have. Collaboration. That's the book David and I are writing. We're going to move through this quickly. I don't usually have to do this in 35 minutes. Collaboration. All of the stuff that I talked about now. Think, feel, behave, power, leadership, decision, conflict, all wrapped up into this concept of what insights do you get? What insights do you get? How do you help people uncover their insights? How do you help people collaborate to create a win-win situation? So in any situation where there's a conflict, you can think about, am I going to be passive or am I going to be assertive? Am I going to be cooperative or uncooperative? Do I want to avoid the situation? Do I want to compete and win? Do I want to accommodate the other person? Do I want to compromise where we both give something up? Or should we collaborate and truly look for a win-win together for what it is we want? And then the last skill of argumentation. Argumentation. Rhetoric, logic, dialogue. Rhetoric, a concern for the audience. You want their agreement, but you want it voluntarily. Logic, a concern for the structure of reasoning, being able to build your case. Dialectic is questioning your knowledge through Q&A. And being open, truly being open and looking to change your mind. Benjamin Franklin in his autobiography said, for the last 50 years of my life, I have never directly contradicted somebody. In fact, when I go into a conversation where I disagree with somebody, I go in with the intention of proving myself to be wrong. Think about the power of that. Think about the power of that. Never directly contradicting somebody. Most of us, when we go into a discussion with somebody and we have a point of view, what do we want to do? Get them to change their mind. I love changing my mind, because if somebody can help me change my mind, the decision is better than the one I had. But boy, you gotta let your ego go. And this stuff, the harder it is, the smarter you are, and the more letters you have after your name, the harder it is to do that, because you're used to being right. You're used to being right. So, as David said, people I coach and work with, I love when they say, this person's really smart. And I say, oh, what? It what? You wouldn't be calling me if they were smart at what it is I'm going to help them do. So the smarter you are, the harder it is to truly listen to somebody else's point of view. And the key thing is, how do you ask good questions? How do you ask good questions? The most powerful way to influence is by asking questions and not telling. The great philosopher Spinoza said, I judge a person more by the questions they ask than the answers they give. And that's such a big part of the premise of the book David and I are creating. Questions. What were you trying to do? What worked? What didn't work? What were you hoping I could do for you? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you change? What would you do more of? What would you do less of? What would you start doing that you're not doing? What would you stop doing that you are doing? They're key. So, the key's questions. Now, on your, you gotta get through this in 10 minutes. Very quickly, you got a piece of paper on your table.
In the pamphlet.
In the pamphlet and some on the table. I want you to look at the unrecognizable habits. Right on the top it says winning too much. And there's a little descriptor. A little descriptor. What I want you to do is to get down that sheet, read them quickly, and put the initials of individuals in your life that demonstrate some of those unrecognizable habits. And the reason I say other people, because I can't imagine anybody in this room demonstrating any of those behaviors. So think about other individuals in your life who demonstrate some of those behaviors. Okay, more importantly, turn the paper over now. Now, what I want you to do on this side, I want you to get down this list. And I want you to think about about yourself. If you could wave a magic wand, what are 3 things on this side of the piece of paper that you would like to be more effective at and be recognized and acknowledged by others as more effective at? Now narrow it down to 1. Just one thing on that piece of paper. If you could wave a magic wand, you would like to be more effective at and be recognized and acknowledged by others as more effective at. Now, here's what I'm going to have you do. I know I'm rushing you through this. I'm going to have you all get on your feet, pair off, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes. And I want you to talk to as many people in the room as you can in 5 minutes. This is not a dialogue, it's not a debate. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to say to the person you're standing next to, I would like to become more effective at, whatever it is, say, please give me 2 suggestions. Jot them down. Don't say another word other than thank you. Change roles. They tell you what they want to improve. Give them 2 suggestions. And in 5 minutes, talk to as many people in the room as you can. Now, I'd like you to just holler out 1 word to describe that exercise. Anyway, holler out 1 word. Huh? Uncomfortable.
Informative.
Informative.
Effective.
Effective. Interesting. Now think about it. If I had told you at the beginning of this 45 minutes ago, you would call it all those things, you would have thought I was crazy. Now let's analyze why. First, you picked what you wanted to work on. Wasn't your boss, wasn't a performance appraisal, wasn't a big 360. I said, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you like to be more effective at? You picked it. I gave you some ground rules. Really no discussing back and forth, hopefully. Just said, I'd like to become more effective at this. Give me a couple of suggestions. You didn't critique the suggestions. You just said thank you. And the other thing that's important, it was about the future, not the past. This was not feedback. This was getting suggestions for the future on something that you said was important to you. So when I work with teams, you get them going. Just imagine a team of 6 or 8 people. Everybody picks one thing. People know what they're working on, and they help each other get better at leadership or management skill. And then you measure it. We do tiny little mini surveys that go out to people 6 months later, and they say, Joe committed to listen to different points of view with an open mind before giving his opinion. Is he more effective at it? Yes or no? It takes a couple of minutes. You can really move things in a direction that you want. So, in wrapping things up, one of the things that one of my colleagues wrote a book called Mojo. What is it? We hear it thrown around in sports. The way we've defined it is that positive spirit toward what you're doing right now that starts on the inside, radiates to the outside. People see it. Our mojo is a combination of our identity, who we think we are, achievement, what have we done lately, reputation, what do other people think of us, and acceptance. Accept what you can change and what you can't. Differentiate between being able to influence and control. So, as Newcomb ponders sitting under the apple tree, thinking about where things can go, let's talk about mojo. Our default position in life is not meaning and happiness. It's inertia. Once we're comfortable, we will tend to stay where we are until something moves us. Newton's 3 laws of motion. An object will stay at rest until something pushes it in a direction. Second, it'll tend to go in the direction that it's being pushed. And third, for every action, there's going to be an equal and opposite reaction. So, losing weight is easy. Keeping it off is hard. And as my brother-in-law said, quitting smoking is easy. I've done it 30 or 40 times. So when you think about where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years in your career, how good of a leader do you want to be? What do you need to do more of? What do you need to do less of? In 45 minutes, you pick something, you got a few suggestions. The challenge is, go do it. Go do it. Thinking about it is just thinking about it. How good do you want to be? And go for it. Thank you very much.
I want to present the certificate of appreciation. In your name, we're going to be donating $100 to the ISSA Educational Foundation to promote scholarship in information security, and perhaps human hard skills. For those of you who don't think that this is possible, come and see me. I'll bring you over to a couple of my team members and colleagues who have used these methodologies to make changes for the better, and they are absolutely amazing. I can just say that as a student of Chris's, I'm a huge fan, and we're so fortunate to have him here today. So thank you very much.